Microsoft seems to insist that you're aware of how to configure user rights, particularly since this task is included, I believe, in 3 different locations in this 70-410 learning path. Originally, back a couple of courses ago, we talked about how in the local user rights assessment dialog box, you could go and configure which users on a single machine should have different privileges to perform tasks on that Windows server. But I want to show you at least one other location where those configurations can be made. Before I do that, though, I want to just kind of point again to the list of security groups here that exist in this users container in Active Directory users and computers. These, as I said, are those that exist right out of the box. And so I would have a familiarity of what these groups are. We'll talk more about groups in the next module coming up. I would also have an awareness of these built-in groups that exist here. These are the domain local groups that are built into the domain. These provide functionality so that you can provide then that functionality to individual users to be a backup operator or an account operator, for example. Now, these groups can come in handy when it comes time to configure the user rights assessment on an individual machine, because you can use them to put users into groups and then assign privileges to those groups as opposed to the individual users. And in fact, earlier ago, here under Tools, for a specific computer, we took a look at the local security policy on that machine to just see where we might go about configuring the user rights assessment for the various different tasks and people that should have access to perform those tasks on a computer. But the one thing I want to show you is just a tease of the upcoming course that we'll be talking about when it comes to Active Directory, because as you can imagine, with the sheer number of groups that are out there and the number of also individual rights that could be configured on a group, this is just a very large list. And the combination of these multiplied by the number of servers you have to manage can make this rather unwieldy over time. The one tool I want to show you, and again, this is a tease for our upcoming talk on group policy, is the Group Policy Management Console here, where I'm going to take a look at the default domain policy so that I can just show you here it is entirely possible in one location to configure the user rights assessment, not just for a single machine, but in the case of this default domain policy, for every machine that attaches to the domain. I could also create additional group policy objects and associate them in the correct locations. This is also a topic for later, so that I could configure specific machines with the types of security settings that I may require. Down here under security settings and local policies is this same user rights assessment that we saw before. And right now here with the default domain policy, as you can see, none of them are defined. So we won't be enforcing any groups or users into these policies at this point. But it's entirely possible for me to make some changes here, like to change the time zone, to add in a user or group here that would be then subsequently added in to every server and really every desktop that attaches here into our Active Directory domain. So if you find yourself getting overwhelmed with all the extra steps that may be required to configure user rights on an individual machine, well, prepare yourself for group policy, because it's there where we can do things in a much more cohesive manner.